Oftentimes what happens is what's called a peanut butter spread, where you just apply a percentage to everyone. Well, what happens to all those customers that you mispriced this at the start, right? And now a 10% increase, you're actually still losing money on them, right? And so when you do have these issues with pricing, they're not just impacting you today on the revenue line, they're impacting you on your ability to manage them going forward.
Not everyone makes the news, but behind every growth-driving experience, product, and transformation are experts who shape the outcome. Welcome to Behind the Growth, a podcast for digital leaders and those aspiring to become one. Each episode features a candid conversation with a remarkable individual. Join us as we focus on their struggles, wins, and lessons learned you won't find anywhere else. Let's get started.
Welcome to Behind the Growth. I'm your host, Mudassir Malik, and today we're celebrating Michael McCunney, VP Marketing at Revenue Analytics. Michael, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely stoked. I don't know how long I have to sit through this timeshare pitch, but I'm excited to learn more.
We just roll. Yeah, we're going to discuss pricing, but I think, before that, we'd love to hear more about you, your career across industries, and wearing multiple hats.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on. If it isn't already kind of obvious to the listeners and the viewers on there, Mudassir and I have gone back for quite a while, and a lot of respect for this gentleman. Certainly a savvy marketer, and you're smarter for listening to him. Unfortunately, I'm going to take some of that knowledge away from you today, but if you keep on listening to him, I think it'll net out just fine for you. So quick background on me. I'm one of those fortunate folks that always known what they wanted to do with their life from an early age. I was into marketing, which sounds really dorky, but I was the guy on the football team and hockey team that was missing practices to compete in marketing stuff. And so for quite a long time, I've been in marketing and really enjoyed it, and have managed to had some really great opportunities to lead some teams, to build some businesses from scratch, from the ground up, in marketing teams. And I've been very fortunate to have some success, and really enjoying this part of my career where I'm able to help kind of take some marketers that were junior marketers, get them to be senior marketers, take senior marketers and have them be, marketing leaders. And so super excited to be on the show, and any kind of information I can pass along to marketers or other folks, I'm happy to do so.
Excellent, man. Thank you so much, Michael. And I think, you're one of those marketers who've really been through, really across all kinds of different functions. So you bring in a lot of perspectives from product to brand to performance to business development to kind of really working in the sales also. So I think you bring in a lot of value, and we love that.
Thanks. Yeah. It's funny. When I was a younger marketer, not that I'm young now, like the gray beard here, it's probably just the problem with your video equipment. That's actually not very young and youthful. When I was a younger marketer, I really wanted to be a very specific thing, right? Product marketing, or I wanted to be known for a very specific channel or whatever it would be. And when I started becoming more of a generalist, when I heard that name, I thought it was so pejorative, so accusatory, that you're not really good at anything, right? So you're a generalist. And the truth is, I happened to get tossed in the fire a couple of times where I had to just figure out a bunch of things, right? For everything from a product launch to PPC to SEO to brand extensions and the whole 9 yards. And at the time I thought, I was being tested by big guns upstairs. I did something wrong in my life to kind of require that horrible thing to happen. But the truth is, being able to learn what good looks like across a variety of different things has been super, super helpful in my career, just to know what good looks like, and knowing so I'm not the one to do it. At least I know what it looks like, so I can have folks that are much smarter than me, like yourself, help me out and figure out how to accomplish those goals.
Yeah, thank you. And you're just being too kind. But I also want to appreciate your organization. Congrats on your recent strategic relations with, I believe it was IG Hotels and Resorts.
Yes.
So that's a good win.
Yeah. Super stoked about that. We've had a relationship with IHG for a while, but to be able to have our revenue management system be selected as one that they're going to be rolling out, obviously it says a lot to us in the market. They're a pretty big player. So for them to kind of put chips on us really was very rewarding. And, we all try to fight the good fight, right? But sometimes you get some of those accounts that make you be like, okay, we're doing something right here. This is good. This is great. So we're super stoked relationships with them. They're a fantastic career.
Absolutely. And I guess your guys are also labeled as gurus of revenue management. And I was just wondering if you would love to tell us, which industries are you guys helping out?
Sure. So we're very specifically in 3 industries where there's absolutely zero cross sells. And as a marketer, I love that. I do not love that. Right, just in case the sarcasm is not flowing over here. So manufacturing and distribution is one vertical, hospitality, so like hotels is another, and then media ad sales. So, like broadcast, television, and radio. Those are the 3 specific industries that we help out. You might have heard of the term revenue management before. You may have not. I know I certainly didn't prior to interacting at Revenue Analytics, and think of revenue management as like this large rectangle. Now pricing is like a box inside of that rectangle, but you also have things like inventory controls and framing and rebates. And there's a whole lot that goes into it. But at the end of the day, what you're really dealing with oftentimes is an expiring asset of some sort or opportunity cost that you're trying to capitalize on.
So was this always the target that you would narrow down onto these 3, or has it been that you guys have tried some others and then found that this was where you want to be?
Yeah, it's a really great question, right? Because we have transformed the company from what I would argue is more of a business services kind of a management consultancy that was delivering software products to now more of a SaaS and skills type of set where we're having our people help, but still, very specifically having the software that we've developed to help those specific things over time. But our breadth of helping companies is fairly wide. In fact, one of my favorite stories, and we don't participate in this anymore, but is actually helping out Coca-Cola with their Minute Maid solution. So if you'd indulge me, I think it's a pretty neat story.
Yeah, go for it. Like, we'd love to hear it.
So how we got involved was different origins come from different areas of the world, and depending upon where they are, what kind of frost climates are, et cetera, there's a slight variation in flavor, right? And so what happens is, they have, and I'm making it up, let's say it's 40% Brazilian, 30% Floridian, and the rest from, South America or something, right? Various other South American countries. And they would build these juice profiles for Minute Maid off of those quantities. But what happens when there's issues like, a forest fire or trade embargoes or something like that? And so they actually worked with Revenue Analytics to create very specific flavor profile that was replicable by using other oranges from other areas of the world to get that same exact Minute Maid taste. And so that's one of my favorite really kind of neat things where it's like, sometimes you talk about analytics and math and it's kind of boring. It's like, but you're thinking about how you can extract certain flavor profiles from certain oranges to get to a certain thing. It's just kind of neat, kind of a fun one.
Incredible. And I'm just thinking like what kind of, offering that you guys were bringing forward, just that data and the insights that you guys carried as partners probably. So I think that comes to show this is what it was. It was about partnership, relations.
That's exactly right. At the end of the day, that's not to make this a pitch about us, right? But we are big believers that out of the box software is just kind of useless, right? But you need that team that's going to be able to help you actually execute against it, understand how your business is different, right? And I think that the word or the phrase that Jared Weasel at our organization used, I think is so fundamentally important is, are the recommendations business reasonable, right? The math might say something, but doesn't make sense. So in hospitality, I might actually say, you should price this hotel room at $5,000. Like, you really shouldn't. That's not reasonable. Like, no one's going to buy it, and you're a moron for doing it like that. So it's that blend of kind of, using the humans as well as the technology to really provide the result that's actionable and usable for the business community.
Love it. So, Michael, I think businesses can leverage for growth, positioning, messaging, and pricing, right? Those are really critical. And I want to pick on that topic that we've discussed. We're going to talk about pricing. And my first real question to you would be, do you really see it as a growth lever?
Yeah, it's actually the largest growth lever. I'm not trying to just, boast here because we're talking about pricing, but I think it was actually a McKinsey article from a couple of years ago that looked at percentage improvement to actual revenue gain, and a 1% gain in pricing turns out to be approximately 11% gain in overall margin and revenue, which is just, it kind of blows the mind, right? You have all these fixed costs you're trying to hang on to, and everyone in times of economic doubt, like we're seeing today, right? People are slashing whatever fixed costs they are doing. They're trying to figure out how can they limit their variable costs? How can they, renegotiate things? At the end of the day, if you can really nail your pricing, it can be such a gigantic growth lever for you, even in a down economy.
And you guys ran a fun campaign a while back, which was gut pricing. So what was happening there? What were the insights? Like, pricing, I hear you, but I want to see how's gut pricing playing in.
It's really, it's one of those things that I would have never guessed, having not had a ton of experience inside of rather manufacturing distribution. You have these gigantic manufacturers that have been around for, 50, 100, 200 years, and they're working in the exact opposite of a transparent market, an opaque market where there's no real central pricing that's out there, right? Like, it's not like you're doing cardboard or trading in gold, right? But rather it's a business relationship. And by and large, the reps are going out. It's a B2B negotiated sale, right? And so, but also if I'm talking to you, I'm trying to supply you with the lovely plants you have in the background here, and I'm trying to sell them to you. I'm going to quote you an area of the price, but what the actual number I quote with you is really going to be what I think I can get you to pay for. No math, all gut. And that's how the majority of these companies still operate, on spreadsheets and gut guesses. And so I appreciate that, the shout out to the Stop Gut Pricing campaign, but it's true today. The majority of the folks that are out there, that's still, at the end of the day, they're finger in the air. Hey, it feels like we can get this for this customer.
But, if I would side with them, there are absolute complexities, there's this pricing is not that easy either. So how, like, you guys are really in the thick of it. Like, you really guys are managing for a lot of industries who are actually doing pricing on the fly, minute by minute, very, very competitive. And, it's just not a stagnant pricing. We look into a couple of months or a quarter down, and it's pretty much happening by the hour. So how are you guys helping out with these complexities and everything? So help us kind of understand what's going on.
It's a great point, and totally agree with your assertion. This is far from easy, right? I guess for me, the jaw on the floor moment is seeing that these are, hundreds, sometimes $1 billion organizations that are the pricing is done by what you think Jones can get for it, right? And so it's just kind of one of those things where you look to see for evolution, and has that happened at these companies yet or not? And it's, to me, amazing that they've been able to be as successful as they've been without kind of being able to invest there. But I think when you think about pricing at the highest level, you want to start with elasticity, right? Elasticity, ASP, and repeatable purchases, right? So if you're out there selling yachts to, billionaires, and it's highly, highly personalized, and the guy wants a yacht, they're going to buy the yacht. You don't really have to worry about pricing as much as you have to worry about building what they want to buy, right? Versus something that is, hey, I'm going to use this on an ongoing basis. I'm going to buy a lot of it. There's a lot of these transactions, and it's either, it's barely elastic. The free audience, if you don't remember back in the B school or, econ days, so elasticity with price, think of a sock is kind of how it was taught with me, which is if it's inelastic, that means that there's no pull left in the sock. The further that you pull it away from each other, it doesn't really matter. So that means something is inelastic with prices. I can raise or lower. It's not going to really have an effect on what type of volume of revenue is going to come in, because people's purchase behavior is going to be about the same, versus something that's hyper elastic, which is highly commoditized goods typically, right? Like salt. If you have, two things of salt side by side, one significantly different than the other in the price, you'll likely see a significant difference in purchase behavior. So the more aggressive the market that you're in, the more repeatable, the more commoditized your market is. That's really where you really have to dial in your pricing, versus something where it's a once in a 6-year kind of a thing where you're not necessarily, fighting against many other folks. Pricing isn't one of the main things you should be focused on. It's more about delivery of what the market wants.
And how do you see the relationship between revenue and customer experience and pricing? What's the equation there? What's your point of view?
Well, that's a great question. Very timely too, as you see all these conversations on GTM, you see it in peak community, you see it happening in a lot of places. I'd like to answer that in a slightly perhaps different way, which is no one has been thinking about the customer from before they knew you to when they might become an alumni, is kind of our favorite way of saying it, which is they're no longer paying you to do something, right? I think marketing is going to own that. I think marketing in the next, 5 to 10 years is going to actually be responsible for pre-relationship, the courting, the onboarding, the usage, the actual customer experience, and then either evangelism or retention. And so I think pricing certainly has a big effect on that, right? Where people either have an expectation as to the value that's out there, the price they're willing to pay. No one loves to feel gouged, right? So what is that fine line between how can you have profitable business where the customer is happy, they feel like they're getting a good value, and the company is also able to, have a business that grows based upon external factors such as inflation and competition.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I think more so now, I think it's a very critical topic. A lot of people scrutinize, or like they're looking at much more deeper than they would have in the past. And so, Michael, you guys are making millions for the organization you guys are working for. But my question would be to take a little different perspective to it. Is there a human benefit, or what's the people side of the story of all of this?
Yeah, it's thank you for asking that. It's one of my favorite things about it because, the money is great, et cetera, but there is a human part of this, which is kind of interesting. So when you think about just the sales process, when it's a negotiated sale rates, you're going back and forth. Give you an example. Let's say that you got this new customer and you're the salesperson. You say, I think I really need this 35% discount to close this business. And so you go to your boss, and your boss is going to have to ask his boss, and then he's going to have to ask her boss, and then, keep on going up the chain. And eventually as you get to your CFO, and your CFO is going to be, having these victims of Tums, wondering why he's giving these discounts out. And they're going to push back and say, why do you need this? And there's this back and forth friction that happens between these groups where one's fighting for margin, one's fighting for new business. Both think they're doing the right thing. Both think the other party's wrong. Right? That's really hard. And so at the end of the day, what winds up happening is you have this, fairly junior salesperson that winds up coming to the CFO and be like, well, do you want the business or not? Right. And the CFO is always going to be in a place where if they turn down business and you don't hit your goal, well, I know who to talk to. Right. Versus, okay, fine, we can make it up on volume here or acquiesce over there. And so the CFO is in a very unfavorable position where eventually they have to kind of say yes to the business. And so what oftentimes you'll see our solutions do is really help align internally the strategy of the company where, hey, you know what, this certain kind of business, it just doesn't make sense for us. And no matter what it is, we're not going to give an exception for things under $5 for this certain area. And this, maybe it's too close to a plant or too far away. And it really helps build some parameters around there. And what we're able to do is show companies that, hey, for very specific businesses like yours, based on all these different factors, there's an 89% chance that they're going to purchase within those bands, right? And so then the CFO finally has something to fall back on, data. I don't know if you guys have heard of this thing called data, but it's really effective at having discussions, right? And so like, okay, all right, so are you telling me that yours is the 1 in 9, that doesn't kind of, okay, is it really that unique? Help me understand why it's not. Okay, maybe I'll give you 1% more or 1% less, but it's going to close within those parameters. That gives the salesperson the confidence to make that ask as well, right? Because they're not necessarily going out there and trying to overly discount just for giggles. They think that's what's necessary. And we can arm them with the data that lets them understand, here's how I can offer a price that's going to close, that's not going to leave money on the table. And best of all, doesn't create that internal friction between sales and finance that exists all the time. Once you have those rules in play, you don't have to have back and forth because you're unified. You know what you're doing. You know what the game plan is, and you got to execute against it. And if you're trying to tell me that your business is the 1 or 100 that need the discount, guess what? You're wrong. Try again, go somewhere else, and it really just cuts down on the unnecessary back and forth. And that's, to me, honestly, that makes people happier not to have that back and forth, ever ongoing. Yes, I need the discount. No, you don't.
Absolutely. Especially when you're going to be working next to each other and you're going to bump into each other, you definitely need that firewall.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Love it. So we're coming up on our time, Michael, here. And I was wondering if you have an advice for the ones who are leaving revenue on the table.
Yeah, I would say this. If you are especially if you're in an industry where you're having a good amount of customers, a good amount of SKUs, and enough variability that you don't feel great that everybody's in 3 to 5 buckets, it becomes a problem, not just on the way in, but how to manage it, right? Because unless you have something in place, when it's time to raise prices, how do you go about doing it? Oftentimes what happens is what's called a peanut butter spread, where you just apply a percentage to everyone. Well, what happens to all those customers that you mispriced this at the start, right? And now a 10% increase, you're actually still losing money on them, right? And so when you do have these issues with pricing, they're not just impacting you today on the revenue line, they're impacting you on your ability to manage them going forward, right? So it's really well worth your investment and can be such a gigantic profit lever for you to be able to look at your pricing, how you're doing it, and come up with a way to manage it in a way that makes sense, that's logical, that works for your customers and your business.
Fantastic. Great advice. Thank you so much for that. And Michael, where can our listeners go to connect with you?
Well, there are not many McCunneys out there, which is probably a good thing. So LinkedIn, McCunney, McCunney. You can find me there, or my email address, MikeMcCunney@yahoo.com.
Awesome. Michael, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your insightful conversation.
Thank you, my friend. I enjoyed being on.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Growth. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow along on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. This podcast is brought to you by Mobile Live, a team of digital experts specializing in designing experiences, building products, and scaling technology. For more episodes of Behind the Growth, please visit mobilelive.ca/podcast.